Hey everyone, this is David Bergantino, author of the novelization Wes Craven's New Nightmare, as well as the writer of the upcoming video game Killer Klowns from Outer Space, the game. And you're watching SlasherPepper.
How are you?
Gosh, I don't know how to answer that question. No, I'm great. Thank you. I'm really glad to be back talking to you, and I'm great.
For sure. Awesome. This is a bit of a different interview for me as well, because usually I go in wondering like, oh, what will the person be like and everything. But we already know each other so well, and all the viewers out there that watch my content regularly already know you so well as well.
Well, this is part of why I like coming back, because we have gotten to know each other so well. These aren't interviews
right
so much as they are conversations that we share with your audience.
Right, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, we already talked a lot about Killer Klowns from Outer Space, obviously. There you go. And Kiss. Coincidentally, we also talk about Kiss so damn much. So I was just wondering, since I don't know this yet, what is your history with Killer Klowns from Outer Space?
Yeah, I guess it bears going back into, because we have talked about it off and on in the past, but it's been like 2 years.
Yeah.
And at least. And what's funny is, we have these conversations, like the conversations you have with other people who are like, oh yeah, we're thinking of doing a sequel to that, and I would love to do a sequel to this, or a game for that. And it's not like they really have control over it, or really, or it happens. And so my conversations with you about Killer Klowns 2 years ago were the same sort of aspirational conversation.
Right.
And here we are years later, and something happened.
Yeah.
So just to briefly go back to the beginning, when Killer Klowns I first saw a trailer for Killer Klowns in the theater in Cleveland, I believe. And it instantly became, I think it was a teaser trailer, so you didn't get to see much, but it was instantly the kind of thing I said, I need to see this movie. It is my favorite movie of all time, even though I have not seen it yet.
Yeah.
Sometimes trailers and movies hit you that way.
Yeah, for sure.
And this was that. And it didn't come out, at least it didn't get released in Ohio, I don't believe, because I never saw it in the theater. And then I did see it on home video. I went, yep, this is my movie. And started showing it to everybody. Then I went to college, film school, went to Los Angeles to become a big filmmaker. And the first thing I found that happened, my first job in LA was with a company called Media Home Entertainment, which was the last independent home video company before they all became part of their studios. And they were the ones who released Killer Klowns from Outer Space on home video. And I was just like, oh, I'm in the right place. And in the meantime, part of one of my projects as a side thing, I was trying to develop a TV show I wanted to develop a TV show based on sea monkeys, of all things. And I had written, I might have done this earlier, but I had written a 13-episode synopsis of what happens at sea monkeys. It was all an environmental thing that was popular. So, and anyways, next thing I know, sea monkeys are on Saturday morning television as a live action show, and guess who made it? The Kyoto brothers.
Yeah.
and so Media Home Entertainment goes out of business. As we're packing things up, someone finds a mask, an actual sculpted rubber mask from the movie, a picture mask, in the basement, and gave it to somebody. And I was like, but you need to give that to me. And then I panicked, but then I got a hold of myself as much as I could. And I said, well, okay, because I was a coordinator in PR at the time. And I was like, okay, so tell you what, yeah, okay, it's yours, but can I wear this for the rest of the day? And I put the killer clown mask on, this big, heavy rubber thing that made my head sweat. And I wore it for the rest of the day while I did my job. And by the end of the day, I like, you know, by now it's like sealed to my shoulders. I'm like,
Right.
you know, with all the sweat and everything. And I pull it and I give it to the person who was going to give it to their kid because they thought their kid would think it's funny.
Right.
Like,
Very funny.
What it really was.
Right.
And I went, you know, gave it to her, and she goes, "No, I think you need to keep that. You really care about that mask. You should keep it." I'm like, "Oh, thank you." It was like my best day of my life.
Right.
And then the following Thanksgiving, not Thanksgiving, Halloween, you know,
Of course, yeah.
I was in Hollywood and I had built a costume around the mask. So I was a killer clown walking around Hollywood, and 3 guys came up to me and they were like, "Hey," and they were kind of aggressive at first. They were like, "Hey, where did you get that mask? What are you doing with that mask?" And I'm just like, "I got it from work." It's like, "What are you supposed to be?" "Well, I'm a killer clown from outer space." "Well, that's our mask. You have our mask." And it was the Kyoto Brothers.
Right. So
And I'm
cool.
like, "Ah." and yeah, it was a huge record scratch. And so we actually ended up having a nice conversation. We exchanged contact details, and I talked to them, and I talked to them about how, well, not only do we have killer clowns in common, but I told them about my sea monkey idea that they had already got. So I said, "Well, I can't do my sea monkey idea anymore because you did yours." And we started talking, and for like, I'll say about 3 months, we went very loosely back and forth, considering the idea of me pitching a story for a sequel to Killer Clowns to write for them.
A sequel movie at that point?
Pardon?
A sequel movie at that point?
A movie, yeah,
Right.
feature. And one thing led to another, and phone calls were not returned, and it was very early in emailing, and there was no social media at the time. So you go off and you do other things.
Right.
So then years later, after I got into video games, it was still the movies on the back of my mind the whole time, because I had the mask up until I moved to, this is like late 80s, early 90s. By 2003, I still had the mask before I moved to Scotland. And in that time, I would have, say, monthly showings of Killer Clowns and invite people over. And this is when we had big tube TVs. And I would take the mask and set it on top of the TV, pointing at the couch.
Right.
And make the mask watch the people while the people watched the movie. And across the board, they said that unsettled them greatly. And then I gave it to a friend by then it was drying out and getting decrepit. I gave it to a friend when I moved to Scotland, and that's the last I saw of that mask. But then when I returned and was doing much more in the way of video games, and also was getting some steam with my novels, I tried to get the rights to the movie to make into a video game, probably for the first time in around 2000. I don't know, 2006. I don't know. I feel like it has to be earlier than that, because I made a very good friend who I'm sure I met earlier than that. So it might have been around 2000 before I went. Yeah, it was. It was before I went to Scotland. Around 2000 was when I came this close to THQ optioning it for me so that I could then produce a game.
Right.
And then that fell through. I went to Scotland, and then off and on, I had the rights. I had the permission to pursue a deal, sort of similar to what I did with Freddy versus Jason, where I didn't have the rights, but I had the blessing from all the people who own the rights to do the legwork that they didn't want to do. Yeah. They're sort of well, you know, if you want to go to this, you know, you bring us a good deal.
Yeah.
Do all our work. And I'm like, okay, because this is what I want as well. And then finally, I think the last time I had that was I again had talked MGM into giving me permission to put together a game, but this was going to be a little mobile app. And the conversation started with, oh, you know, Angry Birds is really popular. Can you do an Angry Birds version of Killer Klowns? And I was like, yeah. I'm like, no, I said, I'm sorry. I said, I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy who clones other games and just slaps. I thought I worked in the license field. I worked in the license IP field for so long. That's not what I do. I'll come up with something.
Don't settle for mediocrity.
Yeah, or just, you know, a brazen cash grabs was,
yeah.
You know, and so I finally came up with a few ideas, and the one they really liked that I really liked was the clownification app, where I would pull a bunch of images in, and then what you could do is, using photos that were in your device anyway, you could drag and drop clowns in the scene, so that there was always a clown like lurking in the background. And it wasn't supposed to be obvious that, you know, you could, you know, if it's a family photo, you could throw a clown right next to everybody.
Yeah.
But the bigger idea was that if you had a family photo, you know, you just see the top of the head by the hedge over there.
So that grandma prints it and she doesn't even know, and it's like hanging in the living room.
right. That kind of thing. They really loved it. I spent 3 months getting pitches from devs and finding a budget. They were going to give me money for it too. Like, they were actually going to pay for the budget, which is to be about 25 grand. And I pitched this, give it to them. They say they love it. And they go, but you know, Angry Birds is really popular. Could you make an Angry Birds clone? And I went, nope. Thank you very much. And I left, and I walked away, because I was just like, you know, we had that conversation. And if we're going to have the conversation again, it means it doesn't matter what's going on in my mind or what they want or what I want. And I'm just like, oh, you don't need me to make an Angry Birds clone, frankly. And then more recently, like just 2019 was the last time I was talking to MGM about getting the rights, and I had a partner, you know, a guy I was talking to who had been involved with the Friday the 13th game. And we had both met through a developer friend of mine who in Colombia. And so we had this idea. I wanted to do a story game. He wanted to do a like a game like Friday the 13th. Obviously, that was his thing. And my whole business was, well, you know, after 20 some years of not getting a game made, let's just get a game made, and then I'll worry about the type of game later.
Right. Yeah. As long as it's not an Angry Birds.
Right. As long as it's not Angry Birds. And you know, look here, this is a, you know, it's clear that my way of doing things was not getting a game made. So it was incumbent upon me to step aside and not get in the way of other people who had their way of getting games made and had gotten games made. And I didn't hear anything for the longest time. And then last year, I got contacted by my friends, the developers, and they were like, hey, we got this game going on. Do you want to write it? And we're working with Randy. He was the guy I was working with, a guy named Randy Greenback, who was the director of the game director of the Friday the 13th game. Great guy. Well, they had gone and done the smart thing, which was, I mean, you don't need me for a game like that. What you need is these guys for a game like that. And they packaged it together, got a publisher. He became part of the publisher, and they made it happen. And I got so lucky that they came back and asked me to do it. And then not only that, and this is where we start to edge towards how I have to start to taper off what I can say about the game. But but the bottom line is, for a game like this that is not story-based, I wrote a lot of stuff. And the more I wrote, the more they liked what I wrote and asked me to write more, because And this is why writing for games is so different from writing for a movie or a novel, because you just write a story. This was pure world building. So I'm filling in the details of the world, not saying, and they do this, and they do this, and they do this.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's the game. You know, the plot of the game is the mechanics themselves.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, they had me fill in all this background for the world so that we could also take the game beyond, and you have to, especially in this case, in the style of game it is, take the game beyond just simply the movie or a replication of the movie.
Right.
But it's got plenty for people who were into the movie. I made sure of that.
I mean, you'd be the guy for it.
They did too, but there were times they were running mechanics by me because I knew everything about how clowns treated weaponry, for example.
Right. Number one fan.
Yeah. So I mean, it was an amazing experience, and it continues to be an amazing experience. And the reception on this has been incredible. You know, I've gotten more pings and attention and emails and likes than I ever got for Dying Light 2, which is arguably the biggest thing I had ever done. In fact, even in comparison from a cost, a budget perspective, it's still the largest thing I've ever done.
Right.
But in 1 month, I've gotten more than I had for 3 years of association with that. And it's mind blowing what really triggers people and is gratifying to me, because I may have been ahead of the curve, and this is the curse of my career. I may have been ahead of the game on all of this, but what's happening is exactly what I thought would happen.
Right. Yeah. And we have proof on the channel. You know, you were talking about this shit in 2020, 2019, maybe even. I think
it was probably 2019 at that point.
Yeah, it must have been. Yeah, pre-pandemic.
Right.
Can't believe I'm saying that.
I know. Well, that's right. There is a pre-pandemic. We're not quite sure if there's a post-pandemic yet.
50-50 on that one.
Right. That one, that's another thing that changes by the month.
Right.
You know where we're at. So that's pretty much brings us up to date, minus and I mean, we don't even have swag yet. I mean, there was, I think, and at the show where they announced it in Germany that I didn't get to go to. I mean, I'm dying to get a hold. They had clown noses, rubber clown. Man. So I'm dying to get a hold of a clown nose. But meanwhile, we don't have shirts. We don't have any swag because the game. First, I don't think that's the last thing everybody gets to, and nobody knew quite what kind of reception it was going to be. But so I went out and I started buying Killer Klowns t-shirts. And everywhere I go, I have another one. Everywhere I go, if I'm wearing a clown t-shirt, like the other night I was at a place around the corner, guy goes, "Oh, that's a really cool shirt, dude." I'm like, yeah. "Oh, yeah, it was my favorite movie. It's so cool. I remember growing up." And I'm like, "Oh, really? Do you know about the game?" Nice. "Oh, dude, there's a game?" And then we get into that, and he's like, "Oh man, that's so cool. How do you know about this?" "Well, you know, I wrote it."
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's been fun. Like, I can't wait to walk around with this, because not only does it have the clowns, but it also's got the kiss thing going on.
Right.
And that's gonna get.
This is your personality, you know.
It's gonna trigger people in this neighborhood.
Yeah. Either one of them, somebody knows. Kiss or Killer Klowns.
Exactly.
So is there anything else we could say about the game for now?
I think I just tiptoed over the edge, peered down, mentioned something I shouldn't have mentioned, but that's about it.
All right.
Well, there is so much more. I mean, you've seen the trailer. Everybody's seen the trailer.
Yeah.
And I can't say that there's going to be this huge mega bump, but that's just the look of the clowns and the implication of the gameplay. When people see the fleshed out gameplay and hear the dialogue and the stuff that I've written and how that just amplifies the experience, I think they're going to freak out even more.
All right.
Frankly.
Sweet. Well, I
And,
absolutely cannot
there's
wait
also
myself.
one personally huge big surprise in there that I'm very excited to be able to talk about when it's time.
For sure. And we'll definitely have to do a follow-up episode when you can talk about it.
Yes. Gosh. Yeah, you're going to have to do another subdivision of just clown-related recordings.
Yeah, for sure. And then with all my interviews, as you know, I also have some more random philosophical questions. So I thought it'd be fun to do it with you now as well.
Okay, great.
So I was wondering, what makes you smile besides Killer Klowns and Kiss, of course?
Right. That's a good question. I don't smile much. No, I do. I think what makes me smile is simple consideration for people that when I observe people considering each other or sharing a moment with each other in a time where everybody seems to be yelling at each other and there seems to be so much discord. I do believe some of that's hyped up and is very much a part of the media and politics layer of the world, which is different from how things are on the ground to some extent. Not entirely, but when I go out and I'm just observing people interacting in a normal way and seeing the variety of people interacting and no one's freaking out at anybody. And most importantly, everybody's got dogs and all the dogs are chilling together. That makes me smile. When dogs are chilling together, forget the people. When the dogs are chilling together, that's when I know everything is right in the world.
For sure. Yeah. Nice. And obviously summer vacation is over now for most people worldwide. So a lot of people have been traveling. So I was wondering, what is your favorite traveling memory ever?
Probably when I went to Peru and did all of my bucket list, ancient astronaut, weird Peruvian stuff. Especially the two biggest ones, gosh, it's really hard to say because there's Easter Island on the one hand. I mean, Easter Island was always the top of my list.
Right.
But there was something about Peru, particularly Nazca, particularly Nazca. And the reason is, once you get to Easter Island, you can look at it and go, okay, there's a rational, it all looks funky, but when you really drill down to it, there's a rational reason why they just set up stones to commemorate dead people.
Right.
That's what people do. That's their gravestones, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with San Agustin in Colombia. They're all cool and there's a great variety of them, but they all have sort of a rational, even if it's ritualistic and strange to us, they're still pretty rational. And in particular, Machu Picchu, incredible. But once you get there and you realize, oh, this is just a sign of them being smart strategically, where they would plant cities at crucial junctures overlooking valleys so that it was hard to invade them.
Right.
That's really what that was about. And it wasn't there was no mystery to how they could build it, because the quarry that had the stone that built the city is in the middle of the city. It's not like they trudged it from miles away. It's just right there. So okay, no mystery how they built that. Then you get to Nazca. And are you familiar with Nazca?
I'm not.
Okay, Nazca is what they call the ancient airport or ancient space landing. Boy, I should know better by now, a better word for that. But essentially, it's all these giant carvings in the ground on these planes in Peru that you can only see them in full from above, like a plane or a balloon. So there's giant things carved on the side of mountains, down the ground. So literally, if you're standing on one of them, you're seeing, say, a 4-inch groove on the ground and a line that goes that way and a line that goes that way. And you might even see it curl off. But what you don't know is you're standing on a giant spider, like a drawing of a giant spider that you could only see from the sky.
Right.
Now, meanwhile, all of these, so to tour this area, you get on a small plane and they fly you around. It's the only way to really see these things. But these were all created at a time when there was no air travel. There might have been hot air balloons, but there weren't planes. I mean, this is hundreds of years ago. And so that's the point at which I go, okay, I cannot, and nobody has given a particularly rational reason why you would do this.
Right.
Or especially since while you're making it, you can't see it.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you make it? Why do you make it? And who's going to see it if this is the way, if this is the scale you're using?
Right.
Now, the closest any theory I read while I was down there came to it was that the lines are like any drawing, most of the drawings are one continuous line that just keeps going. And you've seen drawings like that, they're like mazes, right?
Yeah.
But they are a picture too. And so one theory I thought was interesting, but not conclusive, was that these were all ritual dance patterns where you would dance in one end and come dance through it, and then you dance out the other side. And by dancing through the spider drawing, you were giving praise to the spider god or something like that.
Right.
I have trouble believing that entirely because, for example, there are some that are on the side of a mountain. Well, no one's going to be dancing. Yeah. It's not like they do rock climbing ritual.
Yeah.
So that I think that's the one. I think that's the one where you look at and go, well, it's there. It's not like the Loch Ness Monster where there's no real proof. It's a bunch of myth and clever hoaxes that have been debunked over time, and it's more the romance of thinking that.
Right.
Well, here, boom, there are these drawings, they're on mountains, they're on these planes. There's no way to see this stuff unless you've got a hot air balloon at the very least. Why the heck they did that?
Yeah, very interesting.
So that's it. There you go.
Sweet. Nice. And then final question, if your life was a movie, how would you want the movie to end?
That's probably with a musical number, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I mean, no matter what, there's something uplifting about, especially at the darkest times, say it's my funeral and everybody's like, it's a dirge, and then it's just something that grows and grows and grows and grows, and then suddenly it becomes a party as people get into that, and like that would be a great ending.
Yeah, for sure.
That would be a great ending.
This is one big party and musical.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
Yeah. Give time. Like when I die, I don't necessarily think that it should be only a party. I think there's time, if anybody's going to care at all, there's time for the solemnity of it.
Yeah.
Let's end on an up note. Wherever we start, let's end on an up note.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Is there anything you would like to add to the interview or conversation?
No, I just, like I said, I'm glad to be back talking to you and saying hi, all of Rogers fans, and just and it's just a good time. I'm incredibly excited about Killer Klowns and what happens next.
Oh yeah, me too.